I've been doing a lot of beta reading recently. I've had people reaching out to me for their full manuscripts. They're all people I've worked with before, like done small readings for before, so I know what kind of a writer they are and they know my feedback. It's not like random people asking me right now. It's kind of nice. It's like, oh, you came back with your next manuscript. You must have liked what I did last time. Oh,
I love it when that happens. When you do beta reading though, is all of them in fantasy, or do you actually beta read different genres?
I beta read a lot of different types of fantasy. The one I'm doing right now is a romance. So be proud of me.
Wow, look at you. So basically you're telling me I can send you my novel. It's so funny when people come back to me afterwards and they're like, yeah, so I didn't take all your changes, but I changed this and this and this. And I'm just like, the moment I put down that comment, I already forgot what I told you. I won't even remember the changes that I suggested for you to do. So yeah, I was just like, I don't know what you changed or you didn't change. It's just gonna be all new for me again.
It's like, okay, great. I'm glad I helped.
Literally, I'm just like, cool, whatever worked for you.
So today I am keeping it simple, because anybody who's been following me recently knows that I've been dealing with some medical stuff, so I'm doing water today.
Alrighty, so I'm doing a lemon tea today. It's not quite like the potent lemony smell. Chances are I'm probably going to put like honey in it as well. But oh wow.
Are you okay?
I could definitely taste the lemon in here. Okay, I didn't smell it, but I tasted it. Okay, now I'm awake.
Do you want to pause and put a little like honey in it or something?
It's fine. I'm just gonna do this right now. Yay. Put some honey in here. Wow. Okay.
I'm impressed you had honey waiting, like you knew this could happen.
I was prepared. I was prepared for this. Are we ready for this episode?
I think we are. Let's give it a shot.
Hey ho. Let's go. Welcome to Tea and Tales. We are so happy to have you here with us. I'm Madeleine Einel.
And I'm Sarah Sampson. We especially want to thank Writing Class Radio and Book Cover Inspiration for joining us and following us. Today's episode, we're talking about tropes. I feel like this is such a good episode for this season because if everybody remembers back when we were talking about genres, Nell has strong feelings about tropes. So today we're talking about our favorite tropes. We're talking about the reasons for tropes. Whether you realize it or not, when you're reading a book, a lot of the things that tell you whether you like the book or not are the tropes incorporated into the book and how they're used.
1000%. You don't even have to show me what the book looks like. You don't have to tell me who the author is, what the book is about, anything. If you just tell me enemies to lovers, I'm like, boom, I'm there. Gimme.
Knowing what tropes are within your novel is what's going to help you market that. It's going to help you to know who you're reaching out for. Because if you have somebody who absolutely hates a certain type of trope, they're going to stay away from it. For example, I see agents sometimes will list tropes on their I love and I don't love lists. And so if you know you have that trope in your book, you know, oh, this book's probably not for that agent. If they feel that strongly about it, I'm just going to move on.
I think it's the same with genres and which ones are popular at the time and which ones aren't popular at the time, which type of storylines are popular at the time, which aren't. But I would say write the tropes that you love. Because it is so hard. It is so hard to write a trope that, first of all, you do not like. And second of all, that you actually kind of know nothing about. Because if you don't like it, the chances are you don't read it. If you don't read it, you don't know what the melody of that trope is. Because I think the same way genres have a certain beat, rhythm, melody to it, the same way tropes do. I think my author dream is to write every single romance trope that there is and incorporate it into my novels. And I was literally telling a friend today, I was just like, I'm going to struggle so much when I have to write love triangles because love triangles is not my thing. So I was just like, that's going to be torturous for me. Might take me like 7 years to finish it finally. But yes, when you love a trope, then it will be so easy to write, because writing is hard enough to begin with. So you don't want to torture yourself even more writing a trope you don't like or don't know.
And especially when you're writing a trope that fits your genre versus a trope that may not fit your genre so much. If you do it right, if you understand a trope properly, you can find a way to incorporate it and bring some spice into and I'm not saying spice levels like spicy levels, but bring some intrigue into that different genre that maybe doesn't use a certain trope as often. I especially love it when you are rolling in elements of other genres that you think, ooh, you know what? This trope in this genre could be a really nice way to put a twist on my story that you don't normally see.
Yeah, I've actually seen these videos on Instagram, and I think it was majorly like Instagram. But people talk about like, why don't people do tropes like these? And then I'm listening to them and I'm like, oh my gosh, why isn't this a trope? I was like, I've never heard of this before, and I feel like I have to write it. I'm just like, well, first of all, why have I never thought of it? And I'm like, why is this such a genius idea?
Everybody has a story idea. I'm telling you, everybody in the world has a story idea, whether they believe it or not. And that is just brilliant to me, the things I see. It's amazing. But especially when people can take a trope that I know, like I know this trope, I know how it goes, and this is going to be predictable. And then they put a new perspective on it or a new spin, or they take it a left turn somewhere. You're like, whoa, wait a second, what are you doing with this? Now I'm really, really invested. And sometimes people like to sit with what they know and just want to read the same sort of thing over and over. But a lot of people also want to see that twist, and we want to see how you're able to change it from the brilliance of your mind. And that's what makes us authors. I really wish I could remember this author's name. I had gone to a thing at the local library where she was teaching us about writing when I was a brand new author. I think I'd been writing for like a year at this point. And she said, what makes authors is the way that we create things. She's like, create words, create new verbs, create new things, because that's what makes you an author. And I started realizing at that point that I really could go off script. I could do what I want to do. And it's the same with tropes. How many times I have seen a publisher or an agent say, I want to see a new twist on an old trope. I can't even count. Like,
All of them say it, and then the worst part is I'm like, what twist more do you want from me? I'm like, how twisty should this get? And so I think another thing writers just need to know, when agents say they need a twist on a trope, they don't mean like throw the bucket upside down and like color it a different color and now it's not even a bucket anymore. They just mean like Sarah said, like incorporate different maybe tropes from other genres and a little bit twisty in there. Or take the trope that you love so much, but just amp it up a little bit or even lower it down a little bit. So I think you also don't need to start like being, oh my gosh, I can't do twists on a trope, like nobody's gonna like my writing either. Because here's the thing, every writer writes in their own style, in their own voice. And that is part of putting a twist on your trope. Because the way I will tell a friends to lovers story versus the way you would tell a friends to lovers story is completely different. Just be careful that the story isn't like sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, chapter by chapter, the same as all the other storylines that you have had with those tropes.
and you need to be careful to pull out what is important about the way you're doing your trope without just saying it's an enemy to lovers story. What makes the enemy to lovers important? Tell me that, and I'm going to recognize that it's enemies to lovers as you tell me the emotions and the twist that you have on it. You don't need to blatantly tell me. I love this resource that you found, kindlepreneur.com. David Chasen talks about recognizing tropes, and that when we talk to our friends about a book or a movie, we default to the recognizable pattern of the trope without coming right out and saying, well, this is a chosen one trope with a boy who has lost and found family. That's not how you're going to explain Harry Potter. You're going to explain there's this boy and he finds out he's a wizard and that he's the one who can defeat the big bad guy Voldemort. There you go, right? So you can pick out the different tropes that are in that. Oh, he's a chosen one. Oh, there's a good and evil trope in here. There's going to be the big bad guy in this story. And you can pick all that out from the sentence that is a lot more interesting than just saying what the trope is. He gives a list of tropes and he says, here's the list of tropes that readers love and expect, organized so you can spot the ones that might fit your own story. So getting to know what each of the tropes means is important. So you know if how you're doing it and how you're twisting it.
I love that you said that because I am literally starting with a new novel and I decided that I wanted to do like a grumpy sunshine trope because I love it. And I literally went to go Google to see what characteristics do like your sunshine characters have. Because even though I've read them before, I've not really written them before. And so it was actually quite interesting to read all these little nuances, I almost want to say, of what all these characters have. Because here's the thing, like, let's say, for example, they're capable to adapt to different situations without having an enormous meltdown. Like, that could be a little twist that you can have, and maybe they do have meltdowns, but they're still like a sunshine character or something like that. So I think you can have such fun twisting tropes up and down and mashing them together and all those things. You can also go the traditional route and just do like your traditional grumpy, sunshine. Everything happens the way it should happen and voila.
I was only thinking tropes within the novel itself and the plot line itself, and I never considered tropes in the character development and the character sheets. So that has been like blow my mind. I always knew that different characters have different personalities, but not that you can have a character that's so tropey that has a specific title and name for the way that you've created them. It's brilliant.
Thing though about, I don't know about fantasy tropes, and you will probably tell me, but with romance tropes, oh my goodness gracious, the amount of tropes that are listed is just insane. And then sometimes I look at the tropes and I'm like, is it really a trope though? That is just a scenario in the novel. It's not necessarily a trope. But I mean, okay, can we shorten that list a little bit, okay? Because I was just like, this reads a little bit long for me. So then it's hard to kind of pinpoint like what are your favorite tropes or what tropes do you like to write and read? Because I'm like, I mean, there's so much to choose from. Because when I do book reviews of the novels that I read, I have a little sheet that I do and I always add like what tropes are in there because if someone reads the review and they would like to know whether they would like it or not. And then sometimes I'm just like, I don't know what this trope is. Like, what trope is this story? I don't even know. So literally then I have to go to a list. And yeah, kind of looks like you are vibing with whatever this is. And then, I put it in there. That's why I always kind of like when authors put their tropes next to their like cover reveals or their promotion of their novel and stuff like that.
Which is probably one of the few places you can actually state the actual trope, like I said earlier, that we shouldn't do. I was speaking more towards when you're writing your synopsis or if you're writing your blurb for the book, don't just state the trope. But if you're putting it on a promotional material, we want that snappy, sweet, fast thing to refer to as opposed to a big long sentence. So I will amend myself a little bit. There is a time when you can just say the trope and get away with it.
Yes. So here's the thing I will say though. Like, this episode is about your favorite tropes, and we're definitely going to go into all our favorite tropes. I naturally have tropes that I do not like at all. But I will always say this. Never say never. Because when a book is written right, when the plot is good and the characters are well developed, that might change your mind. And then all of a sudden you have too many favorite tropes to choose from. And so I'm always open for someone to give me a novel of tropes I don't like and convince me that this should be one of my favorite tropes because I'm all for it.
I have taken the tropes that I don't like as a challenge that I now want to write it in a way that I like as opposed to why I don't like it. For example, in the book that I have been writing for the last year, I decided to add chapters before where I actually started. And I decided to actually start with one of the most fantasy tropey things. I hate stories that start in the inn. Like, dude, I get it. There's inns in this world, and apparently that's the only place you can ever find your calling in life is at
Yes,
an inn.
Sarah.
I don't know. Drives me nuts. But I wrote it. I was like, you know what? We're gonna start there, but here's my twist. And so I wrote it in a way that I liked it. And that's my new challenge now. So if you do have tropes that you don't like, maybe take that challenge on for yourself.
I like that because then you twist it up for yourself.
There's always going to be tropes out there that people don't like, ones that are in vogue and ones that are out of vogue. And the only way to get the ones that people don't like, that they're not obsessed with, into everybody wants to read it now, is to find that twist that fights against what people aren't liking about it right now and show them how it can be done in a different way. We'll go ahead and start with Nell's favorite tropes because she has some good ones on here.
Okay, so it was so funny. I was having a conversation with my friend the other day, and she asked me if I watched the series The Summer I Turned Pretty, which is a novel. I told her no because I saw the trailer and I immediately knew I wasn't going to like it because it's a love triangle. So I was like, nope, thank you very much. And it's teenagers. I'm like, don't vibe with all those drama. And then she was like, well, she grew up with a Spanish author and they did a lot of love triangles, which is why she loves it. And in that moment, it was like the whole universe opened up for me because I was just like, gosh darn it, Madeleine. Now I know where the root of my obsession for enemies to lovers is. Because I grew up reading Mills and Boon, and every single Mills and Boon novel that you read is enemies to lovers. My machtig. Who knew? And I felt so good about myself because I was like, I learned something about myself that I didn't even know. It was all stuck there, all subconsciously. Ever since I was little, ever since I started reading books, enemies to lovers, love, 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 love. My favorite trope in the whole wide world. Like, there is not an enemies to lovers that I don't like yet. And it's just so cute and so fun and so everything. I had a quote once on our podcast where I said, like, I can't even remember what I was saying, but it was something in the lines of, like, you know, you like enemies to lovers because you want people to see the real you and still love you for who you are, basically. And I was like, that makes so much sense. Then, of course, billionaire tropes. You know, people are so, sometimes they're so over, I've heard a lot of people being over billionaire tropes or over pregnancy tropes, and those are like two of my favorite tropes as well. I'm like, I love billionaire tropes. I love the accidental pregnancy trope or like the secret pregnancy trope. I'm like, it's a trope I like, it's a trope I know. And it's for me, tropes almost is one of those things where it's like a comfort read, I want to say. And so I just love that. And then forced proximity, because forced proximity to me is similar to kind of enemies to lovers, because I'm like, they're forced to be together even though they don't want to be. So that is always fun to do.
I was not surprised at all to see forced proximity on your list right next to enemies to lovers, because I'm like, yes, this makes sense for Nell. I feel like they're spin-offs of each other.
Right? Because a lot of times people have like rivals to lovers. And I'm like, isn't that kind of the same thing as enemies to lovers? I feel people just use different words now. I'm like, honestly, it kind of has the same mindset. But yeah, and so then fake dating, marriage of convenience, forced arrangements. I feel this is all a theme of things that I like. It's that passive aggressiveness, you know, that I'm vibing with. And then naturally, my grumpy sunshine. That is just so cute. And the best for grumpy is when you have a mountain man. I never knew, like, I never thought in my life that I would be obsessed with like mountain men, because that's also kind of like a very big trope like happening right now. But ooh, a grumpy mountain man. That is some sexy stuff going on there.
I feel like that's one of those tropes that fell out of favor for a while, for like the last 10 years, because people were like, why are men always so grumpy and so gruff and like blah, 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 blah. Like the and 60s and 70s always had their gruff mountain men types. And people were like, no, I want my sweet teddy bear man. And now it's come back like, no, I like my solid guy who's just going to take care of everything.
100%. Chances are, if you see like a man with abs on a cover with like a lion, then you're like, mountain man. My next one though, age gap. I love myself an age gap. But it's probably because I also like older men. And so that's also a trope that I always love. Though I feel like I'm a bit sexist, because I'm all for like women being like 25 and the men being like 40 or 38 or something like that. I cringe a little bit when it's like the guy's like 23 and the woman is like 35. So I'm still trying to get over that. Though I must say, I recently read a novel from Cassia, who is going to be on our podcast very soon, which we're excited about. And she did like an age gap, and the man was younger than the woman. 5 years, so it wasn't like major age gap. She wrote it in such a way that I was like, okay, I can vibe with that. Like, I was like, she wrote him as a mature adult, and that's why I liked it. So, yes. And then slow burn. Slow burn is like my honey. I love writing slow burns, because you just get the reader so mad, and I just love it. And then naturally when you get that first kiss like that, it's just like the firework that brings it all together. And then I will end with office romance. But I also think a lot of office romance is enemies to lovers, or has enemies to lovers elements to it. Like, think of The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. So naturally, office romance, we have your CEO and your assistant, or you have like two co-workers who don't like each other, or something like that. So that is like a short list of some of my favorite tropes. So I'll hand it over to Sarah.
Let's get into some fantasy tropes. My first one on my list is what I think is a prime example of when you have one trope that people love but then decide they hate, and so they put a twist on it, and that twist becomes so popular that it becomes a trope by itself. The chosen one and reluctant hero. I feel like they are the same trope, but the difference is your character, whether your character is like, oh, wow, I'm the chosen one, I need to do this. Or they're like, what do you mean I'm the chosen one? No, I'm not doing this. I'm not going there. I am not a part of this. And I feel like that one came out of the first. Like, so many people got so annoyed with, oh, why does our hero always have to want to be the hero, that we've created a whole new trope.
Well, can I say, of all the tropes that there are in fantasy, this is the only one I know.
It is the one used most often, honestly. Yeah. So the second one, also used very often and usually in connection to the first one, is the mentor trope, where you have a wise old mentor who teaches your hero everything that they need to know. And the trope usually means the mentor is going to die sometime in the first quarter of the book, or something's going to happen so that the hero and the mentor are now split and the hero now has to go on their own. I like to toss it up, and I never kill my mentor. My mentor always survives and is always there continually. One of the best twists that I've seen on the mentor trope is the Wheel of Time. I love a well done mentor trope. And then, of course, you have your mythical creatures, your fantastic creatures. I love anything that's fun and imaginative and makes me think outside of Earth. I love forbidden love tropes in my fantasy, because it puts so much plot into your regular plot. And I know that sounds like a romance trope over here, but the forbidden love trope in fantasy, it's amazing.
What we've talked about in our genre episode is where you have your main genre that you're writing, but you can have underlining elements of other genres in your story that you are writing. And so just because Sarah decides to have a forbidden love trope in her novel doesn't mean that it's a romantasy. It just has elements of it.
I love being able to bring in those elements into my books and into the books I'm reading to give it that spice, because if we're all sword and sorcery, then the imagination goes away. So the next one I think is kind of interesting because it's antagonist turned ally, which I feel like is the platonic enemies to lovers, where you have somebody who was your enemy who becomes your friend, but it's platonic. And I love that one because I love a good redemption arc on my villains. I love anything that does with strange magic. So corrupted magic that you think is good, but then it has a bad consequence, or magic loops. I want to know what your weird magic is doing. And the last one is the training moments. I love a great training moment. And I don't care if it's a magical training or a fighting training or a mental training, whatever it is that you are having to teach your protagonist for them to succeed. I love getting that in-depth world knowledge in such an active way. It feels like it dives me into the world building and the world in such an active and interesting way that I just feel so much more connected to the journey of the protagonist and the mentor and everybody else. So those are my favorite fantasy tropes. I will put up a link to 21 of the most popular fantasy tropes.
So I actually do find this very interesting because I think I was reading a fantasy book once and then I didn't know what tropes they had in them. So I Googled like fantasy tropes and it's just like they give me like two. So when I was like listening to the ones that you mentioned, I was like, huh, that's a trope. Interesting. Never would have thought that as a trope. This makes me feel much better because I was like, okay, those things can be tropes in fantasy. Even though I don't generally would see it as like a trope, I will just see it as like an element in your story. So this has been very insightful, Sarah.
I think it's easier to see things as a trope the more that you're involved in a genre, because what makes a trope is the reoccurrence of it. And that's probably why I can see, oh yeah, that's definitely a trope. And you'd be like, that's just an element. Because if you're reading things that it doesn't occur often, then it is an element to you. Once it starts occurring regularly and used often, then it slips into, oh, you are now dubbed a trope.
Love that analogy. I've never heard that before. And now it's going to be stuck in my brain. I think now, when I actually read a genre that I don't generally read, I think that's just going to leap in my head to be like, ooh, did this occur before? Is this a recurring event that is happening? Sarah said it's a trope. Don't care what you think. Sarah said it's a trope.
We like to keep things short here on Tea and Tales. Get your fingers back on the keyboard and your pens back on paper.
And if you like what we are doing here and you love the topics that we are discussing and the special guests that we have on, go follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads at Tea and Tales Podcast, and on Twitter/X and TikTok at Podcast Tea Tales. And go to that lovely icon on your device, purple icon on your device, and tell me what your favorite tropes are and help us to go up, up, up at some moment.
Happy writing.
Bye.